For 4 long years, the most powerful man in Seattle had heard only silence from his daughter. Doctors had tried. Specialists had tried. Hope itself had tried. But on a rainy Thursday evening, inside an upscale waterfront restaurant glowing with warm amber light, one ordinary black waitress would make a little girl do something no one believed she could do again. Ethan Romano sat near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, his tailored charcoal suit immaculate, his expression unreadable. Around him, conversations softened. Staff moved carefully. Everyone knew who he was. The owner of the restaurant had personally reserved the private corner table. Yet Ethan barely noticed any of it. His attention remained fixed on the small girl seated beside him. 9-year-old Lily Romano stared silently at the water beyond the glass. Her dark brown hair rested neatly against her shoulders, untouched by the ocean breeze outside. She hadn't spoken a word in 4 years. Not to teachers, not to doctors, not even to her father. At first, people believed it was temporary. Then they called it trauma. Then they called it a condition. Eventually, they stopped calling it anything at all. Silence became part of Lily's identity. The little girl who never spoke. Ethan hated those words. Every specialist in America seemed to have an opinion. Some prescribed therapies. Others prescribed patience. A few quietly admitted they had no answers. Ethan had spent millions searching for one. None came. Across the room, Naomi Carter balanced a tray against her shoulder while weaving between tables. 28 years old, with natural curls pulled into a simple bun and tired eyes that still carried warmth, she had spent the last double shift smiling at strangers despite the ache in her feet. Rent was due next week. Her car needed repairs. Life wasn't giving her many breaks lately, but she still smiled. Customers remembered that smile. Managers relied on it. Children especially seemed drawn to it. Naomi approached table 12 first, then table 9, before glancing toward the private corner section. The famous Ethan Romano was there again. She recognized him from local news, though she knew little about his business empire. What she noticed instead was the girl beside him. Something about Lily's expression made Naomi slow down. It wasn't sadness exactly. It was loneliness, the kind that settled deep inside a person and refused to leave. A few minutes later, Naomi arrived at their table carrying 2 glasses of sparkling water. Ethan offered a polite nod without looking up from the menu. Lily remained motionless. Naomi set the glasses down gently. "Good evening," she said with her usual warmth. "My name's Naomi. I'll be taking care of you tonight." Ethan thanked her quietly. Lily didn't react. Naomi was about to leave when something made her pause. She smiled softly toward the girl. "I like your bracelet," she said. A simple sentence. Nothing more. The bracelet was handmade, woven with blue and silver thread. Most people wouldn't have noticed it. Lily did. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the little girl turned her head. Her eyes lifted from the window and met Naomi's. The restaurant seemed to disappear. The sounds faded. The conversations blurred. For one endless moment, neither of them looked away. Ethan noticed immediately. His heart skipped. Lily was staring directly at the waitress. Not through her. Not past her. At her. Then something happened that made Ethan Romano forget how to breathe. Lily's lips trembled. Just once. A tiny movement. Barely visible. But Ethan saw it. And for the first time in 4 years, he thought he heard the impossible. Ethan Romano remained perfectly still, but inside, something was unraveling. He had spent years training himself never to react too quickly, never to trust hope before facts, yet the tiny movement he had just witnessed refused to leave his mind. Across the table, Lily continued staring at Naomi as if the rest of the restaurant no longer existed. The waitress shifted uncomfortably beneath the attention, offering a gentle smile before stepping back to give the family space. For several seconds, Lily's eyes followed her every movement. Then Naomi disappeared through the swinging kitchen doors. Only then did Lily slowly turn back toward the window. Ethan's chest tightened. For years of silence, therapy appointments, educational specialists, child psychologists, neurologists, and endless evaluations. For years of watching his daughter drift farther away from the world. Yet one brief interaction with a stranger had produced more response than entire months of treatment. He looked down at Lily carefully. "Did you like her?" he asked softly. The question hung between them. As always, no answer came. Lily lowered her gaze to her bracelet and gently traced the blue thread with her fingertip. Most people would have seen nothing unusual. Ethan noticed everything. The movement was calmer, more focused. Something had changed. When Naomi returned several minutes later carrying their meals, Ethan paid close attention. Lily noticed her immediately. The little girl sat straighter in her chair. Her eyes lifted. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. Naomi placed the plates down with professional care. "Can I get you anything else?" she asked. Ethan was about to answer when he noticed Lily's hand. Slowly, cautiously, the girl reached toward the edge of the table. Not toward her food. Not toward her father. Toward Naomi. The waitress froze. Ethan froze. Lily's fingertips rested against the white tablecloth, stopping just inches away from Naomi's hand. It was not quite contact. Not yet. But it was intention. For years Lily had avoided physical closeness. Teachers described her as distant. Therapists called it emotional withdrawal. Yet now she seemed to be fighting an invisible battle inside herself. Naomi's expression softened. She did not move closer. She did not force interaction. She simply remained where she was. "That is a beautiful bracelet," she said quietly. "Did somebody make it for you?" Lily blinked. Her eyes glistened under the restaurant lights. Then something unexpected happened. She nodded. It was small, almost impossible to notice. But she nodded. Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. Naomi did not react dramatically. She only smiled. "Whoever made it must love you very much." Lily lowered her eyes again, clutching the bracelet with both hands. For the first time in years, Ethan saw emotion clearly written across his daughter's face. Not fear, not emptiness. Something warmer, something fragile, something that looked a lot like remembrance. And as Naomi walked away once more, Lily watched her go with an expression Ethan had nearly forgotten existed. Curiosity. The drive home should have been ordinary, but Ethan Romano could not stop replaying the evening in his mind. Rain tapped softly against the windows of the black SUV as city lights blurred across the glass. Across from him, Lily sat quietly as she always did, her small hands folded in her lap, her blue and silver bracelet catching occasional flashes of streetlight. Yet something felt different. She was not staring blankly into space the way she usually did. Instead, she seemed lost in thought. Several times Ethan noticed her looking down at her bracelet, then toward the rain outside, as though piecing together a memory she could not quite reach. Back at the Romano estate, the sprawling waterfront mansion glowed warmly against the dark sky. Staff greeted them quietly as they entered. Lily normally headed straight to her room without acknowledging anyone, but tonight she hesitated in the foyer. Her eyes drifted toward the grand staircase before settling on Ethan for a brief moment. It lasted only a second. Then she continued upstairs. Ethan stood frozen. For years ago, before the silence, Lily used to look at him that way. Later that evening, after reviewing reports he barely absorbed, Ethan made his way toward his daughter's room. The hallway remained silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. He stopped outside her partially open door and looked inside. Lily sat cross-legged on the floor beside a low table covered with sketchbooks and colored pencils. Drawing had become her only language after words disappeared. Hundreds of pages filled the shelves around her room. Trees, birds, ocean waves, faces without names. Ethan rarely understood what any of them meant. Tonight, however, something immediately caught his attention. Lily was drawing a woman. He stepped closer without making a sound. The portrait was unfinished, but the details were unmistakable. Dark curls pulled back neatly. Gentle eyes. A warm smile. Ethan's pulse quickened. Naomi Carter. Lily had met the waitress for less than 20 minutes. Yet she was already filling page after page with her face. On the floor beside her lay 2 additional sketches. Different angles. Different expressions. All the same woman. Ethan stared in disbelief. Lily sensed his presence and looked up. For a brief moment neither moved. Then Ethan carefully pointed toward the drawing. "Her?" he asked softly. Lily's gaze dropped to the page. Slowly, she nodded. The second nod in one evening. Ethan felt a strange pressure build behind his eyes. He lowered himself into a chair nearby, afraid that moving too quickly might break whatever fragile bridge was forming. "Why her?" he whispered. Lily did not answer. She could not. But after several seconds, she picked up a blue pencil and added something new beside Naomi's portrait. A small flower. Then another. Then a third. Ethan frowned slightly. Flowers. Years ago, Lily's mother had planted blue hydrangeas throughout the estate gardens. They had been her favorite. Ethan looked from the flowers to Naomi's face, and then back to Lily. A quiet realization stirred deep inside him. Somewhere within his daughter's guarded heart, this stranger had awakened a memory connected to comfort, safety, or love. And for the first time in years, Ethan Romano found himself afraid to hope and unable to stop hoping at the same time. The next morning arrived wrapped in gray clouds and steady rain drifting across Elliott Bay. Ethan slept little. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the sketches scattered across Lily's bedroom floor. Naomi's face, the blue flowers, the nod, tiny moments that would have seemed meaningless to anyone else. To Ethan, they felt enormous. Shortly after breakfast, he found Lily sitting in the sunroom overlooking the water. The room had once been her mother's favorite place in the house. Glass walls surrounded comfortable chairs and shelves filled with books nobody touched anymore. Lily sat near the window with another sketchbook resting on her knees. Ethan approached quietly. He expected birds, trees, or ocean waves. Instead, he saw the same face again. Naomi. This time the drawing was more detailed. Softer. Familiar. Lily was not merely sketching a stranger she had met once. She was remembering her. Ethan lowered himself into a chair nearby. For several minutes, neither spoke. The silence between them had become a permanent resident of the mansion years ago. Yet today it felt different. Less heavy. Less hopeless. Then Lily did something she had not done in months. She tore a page from her sketchbook and carried it across the room. Ethan watched carefully as she placed the drawing into his hands. Naomi's smiling face stared back from the paper. Beneath it, Lily had written 3 simple words in careful handwriting. "Can we go?" Ethan stared at the page. His heart began pounding so loudly he could barely hear the rain outside. Lily rarely wrote requests. Most days she ignored entire conversations. Yet here she was asking for something. Someone. He looked up slowly. Lily stood motionless, clutching the edge of her sweater. Her eyes carried a fragile hope that seemed almost painful to witness. Ethan swallowed hard. "You want to see her?" Lily nodded immediately. Not hesitant. Not uncertain. Immediate. Ethan had learned years ago not to rush emotional moments with his daughter. But this felt too important to ignore. By noon, he found himself sitting in his office staring at a file containing information gathered by his security team. Naomi Carter, 28 years old, Seattle resident. No criminal history. No lawsuits. No controversies. She worked double shifts, volunteered twice a month at a community center for children, and occasionally helped organize reading programs at a neighborhood library. Nothing unusual. Nothing suspicious. The deeper Ethan looked, the less he understood. There was no connection to Lily. No hidden history. No forgotten family relationship. Nothing that explained why his daughter had responded so strongly. Yet the mystery only made him more determined to find answers. Late that afternoon, Ethan returned to the restaurant alone. The lunch crowd had faded, leaving soft music floating through the dining room. Naomi was arranging menus near the hostess stand when she noticed him approaching. Surprise flashed across her face. "Mr. Romano?" she asked. Ethan offered a polite smile. "I hope I am not interrupting your shift." Naomi shook her head. "Not at all." Ethan glanced around before speaking carefully. "This may sound strange, but my daughter has been drawing your picture since last night." Naomi blinked in confusion. The smile faded from her face. For a moment, she simply stared at him, unsure what to say. And somewhere deep inside, a question neither of them could answer was beginning to change both of their lives. Naomi stared at Ethan for several seconds, unsure whether she had heard him correctly. Around them, the restaurant continued its normal rhythm. Dishes clinked softly. Quiet conversations drifted through the room. Yet for Naomi, everything seemed to slow down. "She has been drawing my picture?" she asked gently. Ethan nodded. "More than once." Naomi glanced toward an empty table nearby and lowered her voice. "I do not understand. I only spoke to her for a few minutes." "Neither do I," Ethan admitted. There was no arrogance in his voice. No authority. Just the exhaustion of a father who had spent years searching for answers. Naomi noticed it immediately. Beneath the expensive suit and controlled posture sat a man carrying more worry than most people would endure in a lifetime. Ethan reached into his jacket and carefully removed a folded sheet of paper. When he opened it, Naomi recognized the drawing instantly. Her own face looked back at her from the page. The details were astonishing. The curve of her smile, the shape of her eyes, even the loose strands of hair that had escaped her bun during her shift. Naomi felt a lump rise in her throat. She drew this? Ethan nodded again. Yesterday evening. Naomi studied the picture for a long moment. Children often drew people. She had seen that during her volunteer work at the community center. But there was something different about this sketch. It was not merely accurate. It felt personal. Seen. As though Lily had noticed something deeper than appearances. She seems like a remarkable little girl, Naomi said softly. Ethan's expression softened. She was always remarkable. The past tense lingered between them. Naomi understood immediately. She had worked with enough children to recognize grief when it entered a room. Sometimes it appeared as anger. Sometimes fear. Sometimes silence. Ethan looked toward the rain-covered windows before continuing. Before everything changed, she loved talking. She could spend an hour explaining clouds or birds or anything that caught her attention. A faint smile crossed his face. Then one day she stopped. Naomi listened quietly. She did not ask questions that felt too personal. She simply allowed him to speak. Many people needed that more than advice. Most professionals tell me to be patient, Ethan continued. Some tell me to accept that this may never change. Naomi looked down at the drawing again. Then she remembered the moment Lily had stared at her in the restaurant. The intensity, the recognition, the strange feeling that the child had been trying to tell her something without words. I am not a therapist, Naomi said carefully. But I have worked with children who struggled to express themselves. Sometimes they respond to people because they feel safe. Not because those people are special. Because they feel familiar. Ethan absorbed the thought silently. Familiar. The word echoed in his mind. It felt closer to the truth than anything he had heard in years. Before leaving, he hesitated. Would you be willing to meet her again? Naomi blinked. The question was simple. Yet something about it carried enormous weight. Outside, rain continued falling across the city. Inside, a future neither of them could see had quietly begun unfolding. Naomi did not answer immediately. The question lingered between them while distant thunder rolled beyond the restaurant windows. She looked once more at the drawing in her hands and thought about the little girl with the watchful eyes and the blue bracelet. Something about Lily had stayed with her as well. Not because she was the daughter of a powerful man. Because she looked lonely. Deeply lonely. The kind of loneliness that no child should have to carry. I would be willing to meet her, Naomi said at last. But only if it helps her. I do not want her to feel pressured. Relief flickered across Ethan's face so briefly that most people would have missed it. Naomi noticed. For the first time since meeting him, he looked less like a businessman and more like a father searching for solid ground. 2 days later, on a quiet Saturday afternoon, Naomi found herself standing outside the Romano estate. The mansion overlooked the gray waters of Elliott Bay, surrounded by carefully maintained gardens and towering evergreens. It was beautiful, but not cold. Not the intimidating fortress she had imagined. A housekeeper welcomed her inside and guided her through bright hallways filled with family photographs. Naomi slowed when she noticed one particular picture. A younger Lily sat on her mother's shoulders, laughing at something beyond the camera. The smile was radiant, full of life. Naomi felt her chest tighten. She had never seen that version of the little girl. When she entered the sunroom, Lily was already there. Sunlight filtered through the glass despite the cloudy afternoon, casting soft reflections across the floor. The child sat beside a low table covered with colored pencils. Ethan stood nearby but kept his distance. Lily looked up the moment Naomi entered. The reaction was immediate. Her shoulders straightened. Her eyes brightened. Naomi smiled gently. "Hi, Lily." No answer came, but Naomi had not expected one. Instead, she walked slowly to the table and sat across from her. For several moments, neither spoke. Naomi simply looked at the drawings scattered around them. Birds, flowers, ocean scenes, small cottages surrounded by gardens. "These are beautiful," she said honestly. Lily watched her carefully. Then, after a moment, she slid a sketchbook across the table. Naomi opened it. Inside were dozens of drawings. As she turned the pages, she began noticing a pattern. Blue flowers appeared again and again. Sometimes beside a house. Sometimes beside a woman. Sometimes beside Lily herself. Naomi remembered Ethan mentioning Lily's mother. Something about the flowers felt important. "Your mother liked these, did she not?" Naomi asked softly. The room became still. Ethan stopped breathing. Lily stared at her. Then, slowly, she nodded. Tears filled Ethan's eyes before he could stop them. It was not merely another response. It was understanding, connection, recognition. Naomi did not celebrate. She did not push further. She simply smiled and said, "She must have been wonderful." Lily lowered her gaze and traced one blue flower with her fingertip. For the first time in years, the silence inside the Romano mansion no longer felt empty. It felt as though something forgotten had begun finding its way home. The visits became a quiet part of life over the following weeks. Naomi stopped by the estate every Saturday afternoon and occasionally after finishing an early shift at the restaurant. She never arrived with a plan. She never carried therapy exercises or carefully prepared questions. Instead, she brought simple things. A favorite children's book from the library, a packet of colored pencils, wildflower photographs clipped from gardening magazines. Somehow those ordinary moments accomplished what years of professional strategies had failed to do. Lily began participating in the world again. Not with words, not yet, but with presence. One afternoon, Naomi found her waiting by the sunroom window 10 minutes before her arrival. Another day, Lily handed her a drawing before she had even removed her coat. Ethan noticed every change. So did the staff. The mansion no longer felt frozen in time. Laughter had not returned, but anticipation had. Hope had. Then, one Tuesday evening, everything seemed to stall. Ethan returned home after a long day to find Lily sitting alone in the library. The sketchbook rested unopened beside her. Her shoulders were tense, her eyes fixed on the floor. When he gently asked if she was feeling all right, she gave no response. The next morning was worse. She refused breakfast. She ignored her pencils. Even the blue flowers remained untouched. Concern settled heavily over the household. By Thursday, Ethan contacted Dr. Rebecca Hayes, the child psychologist who had followed Lily's progress for years. After observing her quietly, the doctor shared an unexpected conclusion. "I do not believe she has forgotten how to speak," she said. Ethan stared at her. "What do you mean?" Dr. Hayes folded her hands thoughtfully. "Her responses are becoming more complex. Her emotional engagement is increasing. The problem may not be ability." Ethan felt his pulse quicken. "Then what is it?" The doctor hesitated before answering. "Sometimes children experience a loss so profound that speaking becomes emotionally connected to pain. Not because they cannot speak, because part of them believes they should not." Ethan sat silently for a long moment. The words echoed through him long after the meeting ended. That evening he walked alone through the gardens behind the mansion. Rain clouds drifted across the horizon while blue hydrangeas swayed gently in the breeze. The same flowers Lily drew over and over again. The same flowers her mother had loved. Suddenly, a realization struck him with startling force. Every memory Lily treasured seemed connected to the person she missed most. Every drawing, every reaction, every fragile step forward. And somehow Naomi had become part of that bridge, not replacing the past, helping Lily reach it. The following Saturday, Naomi arrived carrying a small potted hydrangea she had purchased from a neighborhood nursery. The moment Lily saw it, she froze. Her eyes widened. Slowly, she approached and touched one of the delicate blue petals. Then she looked at Naomi, not with curiosity this time, not with uncertainty, with trust, deep, unmistakable trust. And for the first time since their journey began, Naomi sensed that Lily was trying with all her strength to tell them something important. She simply had not found the courage to say it yet. 3 days later, the estate prepared quietly for a date that no one ever spoke about unless necessary. It was the anniversary of Lily's mother's passing. Every year the day arrived like a storm cloud settling over the mansion. Staff spoke more softly. Curtains remained partially closed. Ethan canceled meetings. And Lily withdrew even deeper into herself. That morning, rain drifted across the bay in thin silver lines. Lily sat alone in the sunroom with her sketchbook unopened beside her. The potted hydrangea Naomi had given her rested on the table nearby, but even that seemed unable to reach her. Ethan watched from the doorway, feeling helpless. He recognized the signs. The distant stare, the tightened shoulders, the silent battle taking place behind her eyes. By afternoon, Naomi arrived carrying nothing except a small paper bag containing 2 hot chocolates from a local cafe. She immediately sensed the change in the atmosphere. The house felt quieter than usual, heavier. Ethan met her in the hallway. Today is difficult for her, he said softly. Naomi nodded. She did not ask for details. She already understood enough. When she entered the sunroom, Lily remained motionless. For several minutes, Naomi simply sat beside her without speaking. The rain tapped gently against the glass. Somewhere in the distance, a foghorn echoed across the water. Finally, Naomi opened one of the cups and placed it nearby. My mother used to buy me hot chocolate on rainy days, she said quietly. Lily did not react. Naomi continued staring out at the bay. After she passed away, I thought if I stopped smiling, I would somehow stay closer to her. The room grew still. Ethan stood outside the doorway, listening. Naomi's voice remained calm, gentle, honest. For a long time, I felt guilty whenever I laughed or enjoyed anything. It felt wrong, like I was leaving her behind. Lily's fingers tightened around the edge of her sweater. Naomi noticed, but did not stop. Then one day my grandmother told me something I never forgot. She looked toward Lily. The people who love us do not want us to stop living after they are gone. They want us to keep carrying their love forward. Tears appeared in Lily's eyes, small at first, then more. Naomi moved closer and carefully placed a hand over the child's trembling fingers. Missing someone is not the same as losing them, she whispered. Love stays. The words seemed to reach a place no doctor had ever touched. Lily's shoulders began shaking. Years of buried grief surfaced all at once. She leaned forward and wrapped her arms around Naomi. Ethan felt his breath catch. It was the first time in years he had seen his daughter seek comfort from another person. Naomi held her gently while the rain continued falling outside. Neither spoke. They did not need to. Then, through tears, Lily slowly lifted her head. Her lips parted. Her voice emerged rough and fragile from years of silence, barely louder than a whisper. One word, just one, but it froze the entire world around them. Mom. The word hung in the air like a fragile piece of glass. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Rain continued tapping softly against the sunroom windows while the bay beyond disappeared beneath a veil of gray mist. Naomi felt Lily trembling in her arms. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway, unable to trust what he had just heard. For years of silence had ended with a single whispered word. Mom. Tears streamed down Lily's cheeks. They were not tears of fear. They were tears that had waited years to be released. Naomi gently brushed a strand of hair from the child's face and offered the same patient smile that had first captured her attention inside the restaurant. She loves you very much, Naomi whispered. Lily nodded slowly. Then she looked toward the gardens outside where the blue hydrangeas swayed in the rain. For the first time, Ethan understood what had connected Naomi to his daughter. It had never been magic. It had never been coincidence. Naomi reminded Lily of something she thought she had lost forever. Kindness without expectations. Comfort without pressure. Love without conditions. Over the following weeks, change spread quietly through the Romano estate. It did not happen all at once. There were still difficult days. Still moments when Lily retreated into silence. But now the silence no longer felt permanent. Small words began appearing. A whispered good morning to a housekeeper. A soft thank you when someone handed her a book. Short answers during breakfast. Each word felt like a miracle. One evening, Ethan sat beside Lily in the library while she sketched another page filled with blue flowers. The room glowed with warm lamplight. Outside, the last colors of sunset reflected across the water. Lily studied her drawing for a moment before looking up at him. Ethan immediately noticed. There was purpose in her eyes. Intention. The same expression she had worn as a little girl before life became complicated. His heart began pounding. Slowly, Lily set down her pencil. Daddy, she said. The word was clear. Simple. Beautiful. Ethan closed his eyes as emotion washed over him. He had imagined hearing that voice again countless times. In dreams. In memories. In moments of desperate hope he never admitted to anyone. Yet nothing prepared him for the reality. When he opened his eyes, Lily was smiling. Ethan reached for her hand and held it carefully. Neither needed to say much else. The moment spoke for itself. A few days later, Naomi visited the estate one final time before leaving for an evening shift. Lily met her at the front door, carrying a small gift. Inside was a framed drawing. It showed 3 figures standing beside a garden of blue hydrangeas beneath a bright sky. At the bottom, written in careful handwriting, were 4 words. Thank you for staying. Naomi blinked back tears as she read them. Ethan watched quietly from across the foyer. He understood something now that years of wealth, influence, and determination had never taught him. Some wounds do not heal because of power. Some hearts do not open because they are told to. Sometimes healing begins with a patient voice, a gentle smile, and a person willing to sit beside another person's pain without asking for anything in return. And on that rainy season by the water, the Romano family finally remembered what hope sounded like.